Hello and welcome to the Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Today we'll be covering dedicated transports of the Imperial Guard. Now I'm sure, like many people, when they first got into the Imperial Guard they were attracted to the tanks. Yes. Although I am a Foot Guard player today, my original love for Imperial Guard was tanks, and specifically I loved the Chimera. This was back in third edition Codex, and third and fourth edition, when you got a troop choice called the Armored Fist Squad, and you didn't have to take a full platoon or anything. You just took one infantry squad, and you had to put it in a Chimera. And back then, Chimeras were really expensive. Like they were like 70 points plus weapons. I think each Chimera would often cost you about 85 points. Something like that. I could go and get my old codex and check, but there's no real point because that's not relevant now. And they used to be like Chimeras used to be really good. They used to be really fun. They were one of the best transports out there, and I would argue today that Chimeras still are the best transport out there. But the Armored Fist Squad, that was my second ever vehicle I owned as the Imperial Guard. The first one was my venerable Lehman Russ Demolisher, and I think I got my Demolisher and my Basilisk and my Chimera all at the same time, although I'm not entirely certain. Can't remember, it's a long time ago, but I think I actually got my first Chimera along the same time as my Demolisher and my Lehman Russ Demolisher and my Basilisk. But I always remember that Chimera. It was because it had my Armoured Fist Squad in, and my Armoured Fist Squad, everyone else was painted in traditional Acadian colours, because I had no imagination when I was first getting into Warhammer. I didn't have my own colour scheme, so it was all traditional green and tan. And my Chimera, I had, but everyone else was green and tan in the army, I should say. But my Armoured Fist Squad, instead of having green shoulder pads and green helmet, they had blue, because they were the Armoured Fist Squad, and the Chimera had two blue patches on the front of the tank tracks. You see where the tank? You can see on this picture here where the tank tracks are covered by the tank track protection, and at the little front there's those two little squares where it angles down. They were both painted blue, because you had to know that the Armoured Fist Squad, they were a different breed. They were unlike the infantry squads, which would generally sit around and not do very much, and pew off some shots here and there, but generally die. My Armoured Fist Squad was feared. In my mind, they were feared anyway. They would always charge headlong into the straight of the combat. And eventually I ended up, and I own like 6 Chimeras now. But I'll never forget that first one. I still have that first one. Even though they're all painted the same now, I can always pick that first one out. In fact, I can see it in front of me right now. I didn't actually realise it, but I can see it in front of me right now. My oldest Chimera is actually alongside my youngest Chimera. Anyway, enough history. I was actually thinking about doing a video of my Imperial Guard history, but I don't know how interested people would actually be in that, from when I started when I was 11 years old to now when I'm almost 24. Over a decade of playing Guard. But anyway, not get distracted. Dedicated transport to the Imperial Guard. And going on about the Chimera, it's such a good, iconic tank. And when you talk about dedicated transports with Imperial Guard, this is the reason why I was giving you that bit of history. Everyone thinks the first instinct when you say dedicated transports guard is the Chimera, because it is such a good transport. Now, if this was 5th edition, or hell, I think Chimeras are fantastic. Anyway, I may start trying to use mass Chimera again, but that's another story. Why is the Chimera so good? Well, it's 65 points for a start, which is relatively cheap for what you get, because you get 2 heavy weapons, you get a multi-laser and a heavy bolter, and you also get a searchlight and smoke launchers. The special rules you get with it are amphibious, which I don't think in over 10 years of playing Warhammer 40k I've ever had chance to use the amphibious special rule. It quite literally means it treats water terrain as not water terrain. It also comes with lasgun arrays and the mobile command vehicle special rule. It may transport 12 models. You may place the heavy bolter with the heavy flamer for free. You may place the multi-laser with either a heavy flamer or a heavy bolter for free. and you may take items in the Ashmodern vehicle list as well. So that's all very good for 65 points. But the cherry on top is the front armor 12 on this vehicle. It's front armor 12, side armor 10. So you really need to keep this thing facing forwards. Now, the Chimera is very good. The multi-laser, strength 6, heavy bolter, strength 5. That allows you to engage any infantry and light vehicle targets, which is good. I challenge you to find any other transport out there that for 65 points puts out 6 heavy weapon shots. That's good. The Searchlight, I think we've talked about Searchlight before, but I would say the Searchlight is another hidden gem of this Guard Codex that we have, because Searchlights, quite simply, just if you have enough vehicles, night fighting is no longer an issue for you. Because all a Searchlight does is you just say at the beginning of your turn, at the beginning of your shooting phase, along with my other shooting, I am going to use this Searchlight to illuminate that enemy target. And now that doesn't count as having night fighting. Now you don't count as having night fighting either on the Chimera, because obviously it's a big fucking Searchlight, but you don't care, you're Guard, you know. Don't really give a shit about night fighting. Most other people are going to want night fighting for things like 3-up Jink on their stupid bikes, or 2-up Jink if they're White Scars, you know. Smoke launchers are fantastic. Smoke launchers, oh no, my vehicle got stunned last turn. Poof. 5-up cover safe, bitch. You know, it's good. You can't say no to free smoke launchers. As I said before, amphibious isn't really a big deal. Lasgun arrays is interesting. Because you can now... the old Chimera, in the old Codex, it didn't have lasgun arrays. It just simply said 5 models may shoot out the top hatch, and the lasguns were just there for decorative purposes. And now they've gone back. That was a one-off though. Now they've gone back to the old way of saying where you fire lasguns out the side of your tank. Lasguns arrays are actually a really interesting rule though. A lot of people don't realise this. I nicknamed the Chimera the Disco Ball now because of lasgun arrays. Let me explain why, if I can find it. I want to find the exact rule. Come on, infantry platoons, chimeras. Okay, lasgun arrays. A chimera has 2 separate arrays of 3 lasguns, 1 array located with each side of its hull. Up to 6 models in the embarked unit, a maximum of 3 per array, may fire 1 lasgun each from these lasgun arrays, provided those models are not using the chimera's fire points this turn, because the chimera now only has can fire 2 models out the top. So generally 2 melter guns is what you'll find. To represent the unusual nature of these weapons, use the Chimera's ballistic skill for these shots. The lasgun arrays can shoot at this ballistic skill regardless of how far the Chimera has moved. Interesting, so a Chimera can move 12 inches and then shoot lasgun arrays at full ballistic skill. Interesting, full ballistic skill lasguns, not bad. If the Chimera has suffered a cruise stun or cruise shaken result, the lasgun arrays may only make snapshots this turn. Lastly, each array may shoot at a different target to the Chimera. Other weaponry... Chimera's other weaponry, though all lasguns in the same array must shoot at the same target. Interesting, right? Because this means that your Chimera, if it has a squad in the back, can shoot at 4 different targets. Because the Chimera's weapons can shoot at 1 target, and the one lasgun array can shoot at 1 target, the other lasgun array can shoot at another target, and then the people in the back can shoot at a different target. So you can quite happily, if you're facing, I don't know in what situation it would be relevant, but if you're facing a situation where you've whittled down enemy squads, and maybe it's turn 5 and there's just 1 member of each enemy squad left on a couple of objectives, 2 or 3 objectives, it means that you can technically drive up 12 inches, rapid fire lasguns into one guy and kill that guy, rapid fire lasguns to another guy, kill that guy, melt a gun or plasma gun another guy and kill him, and then use the Chimera's weapons itself to snapshot and hopefully kill the last guy. Potentially very useful. Situational, but don't forget the Disco Ball, Disco Ball Chimera. And the other special rule the Chimera has is Mobile Command Vehicle, which is very important to remember because it's an officer embarked within the Chimera and may still issue orders to squad. Measure the range from any part of the Chimera's hull. Very important to remember that, because it essentially adds an extra 3 inches onto any order, on the range of any of your orders. So you have 15-inch order range, basically, which is quite tasty. So That's the first That's the first transport. The well-loved, the awesome, the amazing Chimera. Competitive, abso-fucking-lutely. I love the Chimera. I do. I do. I have a dream that one day, I know everyone loves putting veterans in Chimeras, but I want to run a proper traditional Steel Legion list and just take a full 240-man platoons of guardsmen with a command squad in each and just have 10 Chimeras and just have squads in the back of each one, and then I want to drive forward, disembark, shoot, like proper mechanized army, but unfortunately it's not very competitive for guard. Gladius can do it. I would do that army if there was a Guardius, a guard Gladius. If there was a formation where Imperial Guard got to take 3 transports, then I would be like, yes, please. Please accept my 10 free Chimeras. I would love it. But they'll never do that. And the one reason they'll never give us a Guardius is because they don't want to give you a transport that is free that costs more than the squad that you're putting in it. You're paying 50 points for the squad to get a 65-point transport. Doesn't really work. Whereas in an actual Space Marine Gladius, you pay 70 points for the squad minimum to get a 35 or like 45, 55-point transport. It's not a big deal. Anyway, so I've gone on about the Chimera. I've gone on about my love affair with the Chimera. I used to run 6 Chimeras. And it was 2006th edition. I used to love running 6 Chimeras. I obviously used foot guard a lot, but I used to occasionally just bust out the Chimeras and completely, take my opponents by surprise because they try and list tailor against me in a friendly game. What is the other 2 dedicated transports that the guard get? Well, there is the Taurox. And you can probably tell I'm not as enthusiastic about the Taurox. Okay. Because the Taurox is... You would have initially think that I would love the Taurox. Because the Taurox is only 50 points. And what am I always saying? If you can get it cheaper, take it. But the Taurox's front armor is only 11. And its side armor is 10 and its rear armor is 10. So it's rubbish. It's basically worse than a Rhino. Okay, remember that one fact. Its armor is worse than a Rhino, but we are paying 50 points for it. So where are we saving? Why are we paying more for this vehicle? Well, its weapon is a twin-linked autocannon versus a Stormbolter. Okay, interesting. Twin-linked autocannon somewhat mitigates the bad ballistic skill of the guard. Strength 7. A lot of guard players to this day will say, a lot of guard players will say I would murder someone if I could put autocannons on regular Chimeras and didn't have to go to Forge World. So we sort of have this option here with the Taurox. Interesting. Special. That's its only weapon though. That's it. Twin-linked autocannon. Its special rule, it only has one. All-terrain APC. Basically comes with an inbuilt dozer blade. Reroll difficult terrain tests. Its transport capacity is only 10 models, which instantly makes it shit. Because there's a reason why the Chimera can transport 12 models, and that's because you want to put advisors on your units. A lot of the time, if you're taking a squad of 10 veterans, you may want to attach a Primaris Psyker to that unit. Now, the Psyker won't be able to do anything in terms of prescience inside the tank, but you'll want to get out and maybe prescience the melter guns at some point, maybe. Can't do that in a Taurox. May take equipment from the Astra Militarum vehicle equipment list, but the moment you start paying any points by putting equipment on this thing, you get rid of its only saving grace, which the fact is 50 points. But here's one thing that I bet none of you have noticed, or if you have noticed, you never really thought about it. Look, which in my opinion, this one thing seals the Taurox's fate and makes it, honestly, the worst transport in 40k. Okay, we're not even talking about its looks, by the way, because a lot of people will agree it's something that, like an ugly child, grows on you with time. It's not something you immediately fall in love with the look of. But this is the one thing, this one factor, and I'm building this up, that makes it terrible. The worst transport in 40k. Its unit type. Its unit type is vehicle transport. Okay? But the Chimera's vehicle type is tank transport. Now you might think, what's the difference? I'll tell you now. It means that the Taurox cannot tank shock anyone. You cannot tank shock someone with the Taurox. Which means you cannot do what a Chimera can do, which is drive 12 inches, tank shock someone into a nice big bunch, and then fire 2 flamer templates out the top. Or disembark your platoon command squad and roast them with 4 flamer templates. You can't tank shock with it. And it may not seem like a big deal, you not being able to tank shock, but I put this forward to you, to any guard player that has a heavy amount of vehicles in their list. Do you or do you not tank shock nearly every single game? How often have you, as your opponent, got too close to your vehicles thinking he's going to pop on some easy crack grenades and maybe a melter bomb, and suddenly you tank shock him and he just doesn't expect it? Tank shock wins games. I have won games. My brother, who basically has a 5th edition Blood Angels army, and he refuses to update it, but that's his own fault. No, he's really, really good with Blood Angels, my brother. And he has so many Razorbacks and so many Bile Predators. And before he got the new Blood Angels Codex, which in his opinion is terrible, his go-to tactic was to tank shock the fuck out of someone using a fast Bile Predator and then flame the crap out of them. Tank shock honestly wins games, and a Taurox cannot do that. Its one job, the Taurox's one job, is to go super fast into the enemy and disembark your men. That's its one job. But guess what? It can't do that job properly because it's not even a fast vehicle. The one thing that could save the Taurox, and Games Workshop, if you're listening now and you're thinking of releasing a Guard Codex in a spate of love/madness for Guard players, make the Taurox, the basic Taurox, a fast vehicle. If you make it a fast vehicle, guarantee I'll go out and buy 4 of them tomorrow. I love fast vehicles. Okay, my Arbites, I love my Arbites because they're all in fast speeders. But getting back to the point on hand, the Taurox is so unbelievably overcosted. I would argue the Chimera is slightly overcosted by 5 or 10 points. I think now they should go back down to 55 points with the way the metas shift. But the Taurox is so bad. You don't have any weapons. You don't have any armor. You can't transport enough people. You can't go anywhere fast because it's not a good... it's not a fast vehicle. You can't tank shock people when you get there, which is the main point of Rhinos. The reason why Rhinos are so good is it's 35 points. You get your people from A to B, and the Taurox is the Rhino of the Guard, by the way. The Rhino gets you from A to B, and then its main weapon after it's delivered the Tactical Marines isn't the Storm Bolter. Its main weapon is being a fucking nuisance. And the way it is a fucking nuisance is by tank shocking the ever-living shit out of people, creating barriers, being a nuisance. But the Taurox can't do that. It can't tank shock, and it can't create an effective barrier because it's too expensive for 50 points, so you can't get enough of them. And also, its side armor is 11, which means it's not even immune to most small arms fire. It's terrible. And I'm not even going to go anymore. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. I could go on round and round in circles and tell you how much I hate the Taurox, but it's terrible. Okay? Now, there is the big brother of the Taurox, which is the Taurox Prime. And the Taurox Prime is everything that the basic Taurox should be. And I love the Taurox Prime. For a brief stint, for about 3 or 4 months, I ran a pure Tempestos Scions army, Stormtrooper army, and I spammed Taurox Primes. They are amazing. The problem is I'm not going to cover the Taurox Prime here for one simple reason. It is a dedicated transport only for Militarm Tempestus. And it acts completely differently to the 2 other transports. And I feel it warrants its own video. And this video is already getting on for 19 minutes. Okay? So I'm going to cover the Taurox Prime in another video. It's a really fantastic transport. I really like it. It's the one thing that makes Stormtroopers competitive. But anyway, we're not going to go on about that anymore. So, to recap, the Chimera, I love it. I think it's amazing. It doesn't go anywhere particularly fast, but it's basically like a moving pillbox, and that's great. It's slightly overcosted, but it's still super competitive, and many tournament guard lists that aren't pure foot infantry rely on their chimeras. The Taurox is shit. Sorry, Games Workshop, sorry anyone who owns Tauroxes, but it is terrible, and for all of you people who are Taurox fanboys, I honestly recommend that you try out some chimeras instead, because you'll probably find yourself saying, boy, I wish I had a chimera after trying them out. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry for being a bit long, but I still hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.